to show you why racial division and class warfare are central to what Hope and Change was sold in 2008. The videos are going to come out. The narrative is going to come out that Barack Obama met a bunch of silver ponytails back in the 1980s, like Bill and Bernadine Dorn, who, equally radical, said one day we're going to have the presidency, and the rest of us slept while they plotted and they plotted and they plotted, and they oversaw hundreds of millions of dollars in the Annenberg Challenge, and they had real money from real capitalists who gave it on to their children and their children's children, and then they become communists. We got to work on that. We got to work on that. That's a parenthesis. Barack Obama is a radical. We should not be afraid to say that. Okay?
All right, folks. The rest of the clip is up at Infowars.com, and he gave that speech to the American Conservative Union on February 10th, about 20 days ago. And up at Infowars.com right now, we've got Kurt Nemo's report. Establishment gadfly Andrew Breitbart dead at 43. Soros, Media Matters, and Acorn can now breathe a sigh of relief. And then Paul Watson and the Alex Jones report. Will damning Obama footage still be released after Breitbart's death? And he said, we got video. We got a plan. We're going to expose him. Boom, dead. Boom. And that's the exact time they come after you. When you got something like the D.C. Madam's client list and stuff like that, that's when you better release it. The minute you get it, you do not sit on this stuff. We've gotten big bombshell stuff. And let me tell you something. I don't sit on it. Not 5 seconds. Ed Asner, former head of the Screen Actors Guild, hundreds of films, top TV shows, icon, who I don't agree with some of his financial ideas, socialism, but I know he means well. He understands the big banks steal it all through systems, so he says, why not redistribute? But I respect him because of his courage on 9/11 Truth, exposing vaccines, and more. He's a real guy. And I wanted to do a close to an hour interview with him. He joined us for about 20 minutes a few weeks ago. So he's joined us for a full, most of a full hour coming up. And then in the third hour, I'll get into all the other news, your phone calls. And we have a reporter popping in who knew Andrew Breitbart, and he just says this thing just stinks to high heaven. His death sometime after midnight. He was supposedly walking around and collapsed, went to the hospital, and then died. And within hours, they said, well, it's totally natural. We don't know why he died. So everybody go back to sleep. And that's what's suspicious. Now they're saying, well, it might have been a heart problem. Well, again, why you have a medical examiner is they said that Sirhan didn't shoot RFK. That's on record. The police at that time actually weren't corrupt enough to lie. The LAPD came out and said, no, he was shot with a different caliber. Sirhan's arm was pinned down and it shot into the side and the ceiling. First it was held up and then pinned down. And the coroner said he was shot with another caliber. That's all public, been public. But the public never digs into that, so it just becomes a rumor. Now, it was in the LA Times back, the days after they killed Bobby Kennedy, then Attorney General, who was winning in the primaries. And it turned out top CIA guys were in attendance, and they had a CIA guy from the local Skunks Works doing the shooting, who was right behind him as his assigned security that day. And that's where the coroner said he was shot with that caliber in the back. We know the names, everything. But because people don't go dig up the original info, it's like, oh, I heard they killed him. I heard that. No, now it's on record. They drugged Sirhan with an amnesiac, rolled him in. He plays the part of the patsy. Oldest thing in the book. They drugged up Marinus Vanderloob, a Dutch illegal alien. Stripped him down naked, threw him out on the side of the road by the Capitol building, and had the Nazis arrest him for firebombing their own capital. February 27th, 1933. And you know the rest of the story. Terrorists have hit the Capitol. The Fuhrer has to take all your rights now and become der leader to protect us. Oldest trick in the book. Nudging us, pushing us into accepting it. And I'm telling you, They're going to go after all of us with staged terror attacks. That's on the front burner. That's a real possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they're looking at it. I mean, all these White House advisors are putting out policy reports saying it sure helped to have in Oklahoma City. We could blame it on the libertarian right-wingers. Obama, that's the only thing going to save you. Financial Times of London. Robert Shapiro. A bunch of others. We've read their quotes. You're like, but why are they so obvious? Because they think you're idiots. That's why. And so if you're a Fed in a federal building and a bomb goes off, just have a video camera, get through the smoke if you've survived, and videotape and wonder why there's going to be federal agents right there dressed up in bomb gear. I mean, because, and I know maybe it's like Stockholm syndrome, where a lot of you will see them there and you won't even care. You'll never even think because they're good guys, you're good guys. Won't matter, they just tried to kill you. Won't matter, they just killed a bunch of people. You're so mentally weak, even though a lot of feds catch feds doing stuff. It's like, what are you doing loading opium on this C-130? Well, we're told to in Afghanistan. And so much of that came out, they just said, we'll just put it on the news. They grow it, they ship it to America. When you use it, you go to a prison owned by a defense contractor who ships in the drugs. That's why when a cop pulls me over and asks, can I search your car, I just start laughing. I mean, is this a joke, buddy boy? Is this a joke? You ship the drugs in, been caught over and over again from Vietnam through Iran-Contra, right through to today, and you're wanting to search my car? You work for the government. By extension, you've probably got drugs in your car. I'm not saying you do, but you are more guilty than me. If we've got this presumed guilt, you make me want to throw up. Are live, ladies and gentlemen, and for the balance of the hour, the next 52 minutes, Ed Asner is our guest. He visited with us for about 20 minutes a few weeks ago, but he's come back for most of a full hour with us today. Then we'll continue with phone calls and incredible news. Forbes is reporting the TSA is coming to a highway near you. That's 10 years after I told you that was their official plan. I was watching C-SPAN and saw him say it. Not like I'm a rocket scientist here. It's pretty much this program of Total Takeover is public. We'll be getting into that as well. But Ed Asner joins us to talk about a host of issues. I'm going to be talking to and getting one of those Navy SEALs on very, very soon that have warned Ed that they're planting a false flag. It's funny, a few days after Ed talked about that, Clapper, the head of the National Security Council, went public and said in a Brookings Institute report, a provocation is needed with Iran. Of course, we know Dick Cheney wrote the PNAC document the year before 9/11 and said we need a new Pearl Harbor as a pretext. So they talk to us like we're idiots. They operate out in the open with this. It was Cy Hirsch, Pulitzer Prize winner. A year after Bush was out of office, he was scared to do it while he was in office, because I know we exchanged emails, and I talked to Hirsch, and he wasn't ready to come on at the time. But later, after Bush was out, he published that high-level White House folks told him Cheney wanted to paint up boats like Navy SEALs basically use, but camouflage them to look like Iranian boats, paint them up like Iranian boats to then attack U.S. destroyers. And, of course, Admiral Fox Fallon, the head of CENTCOM, said no and spoke out against Bush and was basically removed from command via that Esquire article. So there have been sane people in the military that have already stopped this repeatedly. So false flags are real. And when Navy SEALs are warning Ed Asner, you've got to know it's serious. So I want to get back into that with Ed. And then I asked him the question off air, and we're talking about it on air. Why don't more celebrities, why don't more people, period, go public and talk about what's happening and point out that the emperor has no clothes? But first off, Ed, thank you so much for coming on with us. You really don't need any introduction. You're an award-winning actor, director, hundreds of films. You name it, with all the greats out there. Former head of the Screen Actors Guild, I think one of the longest serving. The star of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, your own Lou Grant Show. And, of course, that got politically attacked. We should probably talk about that censorship. All of this going on, and you join us now here today. But out of the gates, days after you came on about false flags, Ed, then it actually started coming out in the news where they're openly talking about a pretext with Iran or trying to prod them into something. I mean, why do you think they're so brazen now, sir?
I think They create a witch's brew, and they got to keep stirring it. And they certainly will keep looking for new ways to create the false flag, so that as much as the public may get alerted to the idea of false flag, trying to make it as convincing as possible will be the only way that they can sell this new witch's brew. A new improved formula, let's call it. And by talking about false flag, now making it common parlance, we are all on our toes and ready to receive these rumors, and we get all excited. And they accomplish their mission by keeping us off balance, even if they don't do it, so that we are ready for any provocation, and we're jittery over any provocation. And if the provocation doesn't come, then we can pat ourselves on the back by saying, well, we stopped it. But they'll come up with, one good example. If for some reason they found a way for Israel to trigger an action against Iran, and they have to be careful in responding to that action, the Iranians, that is. So if they respond within a limited way, then it'll be a limited war. But of course, if they go beyond that and attack some of the U.S. boats in the Gulf of Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz, then it can easily expand. And of course, that's why we talk about false flag operations, the danger of it somehow becoming more magnified than it was originally planned to be. Now, if Israel and Iran strictly restrict their actions against each other, and it doesn't go widespread from that, then everything's okay. We're still not responsible for Israel, supposedly. But what happens if it expands, if there's a mistake, and we get involved? What's this, more American troops pouring into the Middle East?
Well, undoubtedly, I have family in the military. I have a lot of sources, and since I reported on this a year ago, now it's an open secret that they're massing U.S. troops in and around Iran, in and around Syria. They're using al-Qaeda proxy groups to attack Libya and now Syria. And I'm not a fan of Gaddafi. I'm not a fan of Assad. But compared to what they're putting in, bringing in the Arab fighters out of Saudi Arabia, exterminating blacks, genocide, black Africans, that's now admitted. And the witch's brew is destabilization. That's the goal. And they're now the admitted al-Qaeda groups are on record saying once they've taken over Syria, they're going to purge and pogrom the Christians and Jews that have been there for thousands and thousands of years. Christians for 2,000, Jews for over 3,000 in Syria. This is all being announced, and Hillary's in the BBC today. We have an article at Infowars.com, Ed. Hillary Clinton admits U.S. and al-Qaeda on same side as Syria. U.S. and France arm rebels with anti-aircraft missiles. In an interview with BBC, she said, quote, "We have a very dangerous set of actors in the region, al-Qaeda, Hamas, and those who are on our terrorist list, to be sure, claiming to support the opposition in Syria." So they're having the cake and eating it too, acting like they're not arming them. How do they say we should give up all our rights, Ed, and have checkpoints on highways and TSA groping us and all of this because of al-Qaeda? But then it's on record the U.S. government got the underwear bomber on the plane because Kurt Haskell, our listener, saw it happen, reported it, and then a month and a half later, the State Department had to admit in Congress